They used to let Manute Bol drink the whole time. So he would drink Heinekens all day long to help put on weight, said Williams. So Manute Bol never played sober in one basketball game. Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Show, brought to you by Fantrax and Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and if you are listening to this podcast, welcome. If it's a new podcast for you, welcome again. If you have been listening to this show for the last 630 plus episodes, welcome back. You can follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball, and if you want to make sure you never miss an episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Show, previously known as the Red Rock Basketball Monster Show, subscribe on iTunes. It's very straightforward. You'll find the links in my Twitter profile, which you can follow along there at redrock_bball. Subscribe, leave a review, leave a ranking. It's very helpful in helping the show grow, and everyone who's done that so far has helped the show grow immensely to the point where we're at currently, and I do really appreciate it. So if you are a new listener to the show and you like what you hear, hey, if you don't like it, just give it a 5-star and don't listen again. Keep downloading. That's key as well. But just if you like it and you got 5 seconds spare, maybe not 5 seconds, maybe we'll give it 2 minutes. If you've got 120 seconds spare, head across to iTunes and give the show a review. It does really help out a lot. Of course, what also helps is the sponsors, which is Fantrax for this episode. Fantrax is the best place to host any of your fantasy leagues, especially if it's a dynasty league, but not just a dynasty league. If you're doing a standard redraft league, you can do it on Fantrax. Fantrax never closes. You don't have to wait for that tweet or that email saying, yeah, ESPN leagues are open, Yahoo leagues are open, because you know what? Fantrax leagues are always open. You can draft them at any time. We've been drafting on Fantrax for the last week in our dynasty leagues. We could have been drafting on there for the last 2 months. It never closes. You can do 3-team trades. You can do 4-team trades. You can trade draft picks into the future. You can set up any categories you want. They've got the best free options, the best premium options, contracts, salaries, real-life salaries, anything that you want. Fantrax will have you covered. I can guarantee you with that. All right, we're doing a show today. I've previously done a 2016 draft review show, obviously after the draft, and then we did a 2015 draft review show showing the players who were rookies last season, so Karl Anthony Towns, that group. I also did a 2013 draft review show covering guys like Michael Carter-Williams, Nerlens Noel from that draft class, the people who are coming up for rookie extensions. There's obviously one draft class missing in that group, and that's the 2014 draft class. So that's the one we're going to be covering today. So these are players who, in the main part, are heading into their third season in the NBA. And the third season in the NBA, the fourth season is pretty key too, but the third season is massively key, especially for fantasy value. That's when a lot of these players really kick it up a notch. We saw a player like Giannis Antetokounmpo last season who took one giant 7-foot Greek step forward in his play. There are plenty of examples through the history of the NBA of players who are heading into their third season who take a big leap forward, because let's be honest, rookies in their first season, they suck most of the time. And a lot of the time that carries into their second year. But by the third year, a lot of stuff has really started coming on. And to sort of highlight how bad rookies suck, or young players suck in their first 2 seasons, if you go across to Basketball Reference, you can look at their draft section. I've brought up the 2014 draft, obviously, because that's what I'm covering here in this show. But you know what?
Let's get to it.
I knew something was missing. I've brought up the 2014 draft class, and they list all their combined stats, and they have their advanced stats in a column over on the side. So there's 60 draft choices, obviously. In the last 2 seasons, there have been a total of 6 players who have got a positive box score plus minus. 6. Nikola Jokic, Marcus Smart, Kyle Anderson, Aaron Gordon, Janelle Stokes, who's played a total of 144 minutes, so we can almost discount him out of that group, and Rod Hood. If we look at VORP, we have a total of 14 players with a positive VORP, and 2 of those have played less than 300 minutes, Stokes and Jordan Adams. If we look at win shares per 48, we have 10 players who are above average. All in all, young players aren't good. But this is the time when they really start to kick it off in this third season. So we're going to go through this draft. There are some players we won't touch on at all. Some players I might give a cursory one sentence mention to, but we'll talk about where they're sort of headed in their future. Let's start with the number one draft choice, and that was Andrew Wiggins, who was drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers, obviously, and then traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves in the Kevin Love deal. Wiggins has been a polarizing figure, I think, in fantasy circles. It's fair to say he was a guy that it was overdrafted in his rookie season, probably overdrafted in his second season as well, but did really start to show some key points or key indicators that he might start to become a really interesting fantasy player. His two 8-cat ranks for these two seasons, 106th and 87th, aren't really anything to inspire great confidence. But his last month of the season saw him placed inside the top 50. He was a 20-point scorer last season. But the problem that keeps him down in an overall fantasy sense is that that's the only thing he does positively. Everything else is a negative. He's a negative in literally every other category. But we look over the last month, and that changed. We saw his steal numbers increase. We saw his free throw numbers increase. We saw his field goal percentage increase. In that last month, he shot 48 and 80 and 37% from three, whereas over the season, he was 46, 76, and 30. So big jump ups in that shooting percentage, and he's going to need to keep that going with that 3-point percentage. He's going to need to keep that steal rate up as well. The last month, he averaged 1.2 steals. For the season, he was 1. Now, that might not seem like a big difference to you, but it is, because if you average 1.1 steals, you're a positive. If you average less, you're a negative. And him trending up, and now the last 2 months he was at 1.3 steals per game. That's a positive contributor. Now the rebounds are disappointing, and they were really disappointing last year at 3.6, down from 4.6. And he's never going to be a strong rebounder. He's not a creator. He's not an assist guy. But we need him as a fantasy guy to be a 1.2 threes, 1.5 steals sort of guy, in addition to 20 points, in addition to 4 rebounds, in addition to solid percentages. The fact that his rebound and assists will never really get high, and he'd never be a guy probably that'll shoot 2 threes a game, possibly keeps him out of top 20 consideration, I would guess. But for next season, I reckon it's going to be impossible to get Wiggins outside of the top 50 again. I haven't done the projections for him yet, but I don't know. He might come in at number 60 or 70. I'm just talking about general perception. You won't be able to get him outside the top 50, and it could work out being a decent pick because, as I always say, you can't find scoring. All the highest scorers are congregated in the first 20 picks outside of DeMar DeRozan and outside of Andrew Wiggins. You can't get really a 20-point scorer outside of those first 3 rounds, but you might even be seeing Wiggins going in the first 3 rounds, and that might not make him an appealing play. Because remember, you need those guys in those first couple of rounds to live up to the expectations, not really. You need them to be, okay, I'm getting what I paid, not I might get what I paid. Does that make sense? If you draft a guy at pick 36, you want to be damn sure you're going to get value between 30 and 40, not, there's a 25% chance his best case scenario gives me 36 value. And that'll probably hedge me off him. Again, I need to see how it all comes out. He might come out looking really good in the projections because he did look super at the end of the season, and the increase in steals, the increase in both efficiencies, and the increase in 3-point shooting, it bumps him up in addition to him scoring potentially 22, 23 points per game next season. So he's an interesting guy, and I have softened a little bit on my stance on him, but I think for the first 2 seasons, I was pretty right in terms of, I didn't own him in any drafts. I laid off him in every sort of format because he was going 20, 30 spots higher than what I anticipated or what I was willing to spend, and he was not a good fantasy player for majority of the time. But he did really turn that around, and that's it's working in his favor now, definitely. We look at the next pick, and this draft class as a whole has been absolutely decimated by injuries. So we don't really know what a lot of these players can do, or what sort of, and this was hailed as a super class. Then we saw the 2015 draft come in, and everyone in that class looked tremendous. In this class, by comparison, looks disappointing. But injuries are a huge concern. Jabari Parker, the number 2 pick, tore his ACL in January of his rookie season. Came back last season, started at the beginning of the year, and was terrible for the first 2.5 months. When we got to January, which is 12 months or so after his ACL injury, things really turned around for Jabari, and he put up some really impressive numbers. And he ended the season outside the top 100, like he did in his rookie year, 122 and 111. But The last 2 months of the year, 72nd. He got his scoring up to 19 points a game in those last 2 months. He averaged 14 over the course of the season. He averaged 6 rebounds a game. That's a full rebound above his season average. 2.2 assists. That's a half assist above. 1.1 steals, and that's something he has been really good at as a big man, getting steals. And that's the difference between, say, him and Wiggins. Parker playing the 4 gets the same or more steals than Wiggins, who's playing the 2-3. And in general, you would think the players playing in that 2-3 position will get more steals. And then Parker contributes double the amount of rebounds as well. He also shot 50% from the field in those last 2 months. He shot 77% from the line, and he shot 32% from 3. Now, he's not a big three-point shooter, but coming out of Duke, he was a guy that could hit some threes. So I think that that's something that can develop in his game. Now, I think that the guy that we saw in those last 2 months of the season, or last 3 months of the season from Jabari Parker, is pretty accurate as to what we can expect this year. So I don't think that if you're looking at past seasons rankings of 111 for Jabari Parker, I don't think that's going to be anything that if you get him at 111, great. I think it's going to be tremendous value. ACLs are a long-term injury. I think that he's going to come out and average close to 19 or 20 points. He could hit you half a 3. I think his rebounding, it's never going to be great, and his defense is never going to be great and block shots-wise, but efficiency is there, steal numbers are there, rebounds are okay, they're above average, scoring is good, and I think we can get a bit of a bump in three-pointers. But again, he's not a player who I think can ever really challenge a top 20 status or a first 2-round status, just because of his limitations with his shot blocking, his three-pointers, with that sort of stuff. But there's a real chance he averages 20 points per game this season as part of that core trio in Milwaukee with Chris Middleton and Giannis Antetokounmpo. The 2-3-4 of that team, of those 3 guys, is the way that this team is building, and he is going to be a key part. And he was at times unstoppable combined with those 2 guys. So it is really interesting to see what he can do. But remember, injuries ruined the first half of his last season. So when you look at his numbers from last season, just take that into consideration. Take it into consideration and then delete the first 3 months of the year and look at what happened at the end. Even if you look at his last 41 games of the year, basically half a season, he averaged 16 and a half, 6, 2, 1 steal, 50 and 75. They're pretty good numbers. Then you take it to the last 2 months, the last 30 games, he was even better. So I really think there's a lot to like about Jabari Parker, but he does have obvious limitations, but those things can improve. And I think the three-pointers can really, he's never going to be a guy I think that hits 1 3 a game, but a Thaddeus Young type that maybe gets to 0.7 a game, and Thad's shown that ability over time. I think that could be something that Parker could do, along with getting those steal numbers, which has been a real surprise, but a consistent surprise over his first 2 NBA seasons. Joel Embiid. Probably the best player in this draft class, or probably the most talented prospect in this draft class. We haven't seen him play yet. If you draft him in a standard league this year, I'm pretty confident you'll be disappointed. But if you pick him in round 12 or round 13, whatever, pick him. See if it works out. But I would be absolutely flabbergasted if he plays more than 21 minutes a game and if he plays more than 60 games this season. The Sixers don't need to go, all right, Joel, let's get out there, 35 minutes a game, 82 games. Let's go. You haven't played in 3 years, but come on, you do everything. Not going to happen. They're going to play him off the bench. They're going to sit him out certain games back-to-backs. They'll give him periodic rest days, and they'll ease him back in. By the time we hit February, he might be getting 27 minutes a night and tearing the NBA multiple new assholes. That might be what he's doing. It also might not be, but I think that the potential of Joel Embiid is through the roof. He's their best prospect. He's a better prospect. I'll phrase that again. Forgetting about injuries, he's their best prospect. Better than Simmons, better than Noel, better than Okafor, better than Saric. He's their best prospect. But the injuries is a real concern. So they want to treat him the way they should. And the ideal pairing is Simmons and Embiid. That's what they want to do, because Embiid can stretch. He can hit threes. He can block shots. He's athletic. He's fast. He's a big jumper. He's a scorer. He's a rebounder. He can literally do pretty much everything if he can stay healthy. And it won't be this season because he won't play every game. He won't play big minutes. He will play a backup role to ease him in because they don't need to play him. They can put Okafor out there, who's nowhere near as good. They can put Noel out there, who I really like, but he's still not the prospect that Embiid is. So they'll just ease Embiid in. So I don't think that he's going to have total standard league value. But when you look at his, say, per 36 numbers, I reckon they'll look pretty decent. And for a dynasty league next 2 seasons, he's going to have, he's going to be an animal, assuming that this foot stays healthy. And I've got reasons to believe that it will, because I think that a lot of his foot problems and to a degree his back problems came because whatever height he was, 6'10" when he was drafted, 11, he's grown. He's grown 3 inches. And a fast growth over that 2-year period at that age leads to problems in 2 areas, backs and feet. And it's exactly what happened to him. He has grown. And you don't grow at age 18 or 19 normally. And to grow that much in that time frame, when you're already that big, it's extra stress on bones that are growing across your foot. That's what happened. And I think that if he stopped growing, and maybe he hasn't, but if he stopped growing, I think the foot problem might be okay. And the back problem that plagued him during draft time, I think he might be all right. Aaron Gordon, pick 4. Hated the pick when it was made. Hated it. Didn't really know what Gordon could do. And I'm still really not sure what he can do. But in terms of one of the players who's got a positive win shares per 48, he's one of them. Parker's not. Wiggins isn't. He's out of the top 10. He's clearly the highest guy in win shares per 48 out of the top 20 out of this draft. And he's shown he can work on plenty of areas of his game, which is huge. And that's something that's really important for players. But where does he fit now? Now, Frank Vogel is going to play him at the 3. Vogel came out today and said we envisage him playing like Paul George. I think that takes away a lot of his versatility and a lot of his value. But whatever. As long as they commit to playing him 30-plus minutes, unlike the Dick Scott Skiles, Gordon's going to produce. Now, we saw borderline top 100 value at times last year. He was 139th over the season, but played just 24 minutes. In the last 2 months, he played 28 and went 12-7. He averaged 0.7 threes, over a steal, over half a block, 48 and 65. Now, 65% is not great from the free throw line, but this guy was like a 40% shooter in college. 65 is doable. It's manageable. It's not auto punt. Aaron Gordon, I think that he would have been massively overdrafted this season had the Magic not made some of the more baffling free agency moves by bringing in Biyombo and Jeff Green and trading for Serge Ibaka. But I think he might slide under the radar a little bit here. And I reckon he's a pretty decent chance to be getting 30 minutes a night and being a player who maybe just slides inside the top 100. There's a lot to like about him. He's got the ability to be a 1-1 player. He's got the ability to score and grab a lot of rebounds. The assists won't come, but you're going to get steals, blocks, points, threes, rebounds, high field goal percentage, decent-ish free throws. Not great, but decent-ish. And there is a lot to like with him. His game is really, really fantasy friendly, and he's got more room for growth in a fantasy point of view than those other guys like Wiggins and Parker, I think. Even though he won't be the scorer those guys can be, he can help in other areas. Dante Exum, look, he was a starter in his rookie season. He was a tremendous defender in his rookie season. Did he do anything fantasy-wise? No. Is he going to do anything fantasy-wise this season? Yeah, if you're in a deep league, he's not starting. He's playing behind George Hill, but he will be the primary backup, and he is their point guard of the future. They have committed to him as the point guard of the future. His first season, he gave you 5 points in 22 minutes. He gave you 2.5 assists and half a steal on 35 and 63. I can see him being a 44 and 74 percentage sort of player who looks really solid playing alongside George Hill and behind George Hill this season. I think, again, the ACL cost him all of last season, but he's been back in full practice for months now. He'll be ready to go by the time the season starts. He's not playing in a big role. He's not going to be a standard league guy, but he is going to be a dynasty player who, when George Hill is a free agent next year, they might just say, thanks, George. Thanks for the season. You're 31 years old now. Dante's eased back in. Let's put him in as the starter and see how he can go. I think a lot of people will be pleasantly surprised with Dante Exum coming into this season and what he shows off the bench, but definitely so far we haven't seen much. Marcus Smart, one of the very few players in this draft class with a positive box score plus minus. Aaron Gordon, another one of those 6 that I mentioned earlier. I really like Marcus Smart. He is in a weird situation in Boston with all of the other guards in front of him, but he is a guy that if he's given an opportunity in a fantasy setting, he's going to be able to put up really good fantasy value. That's because he can do a lot of different things. Now, last year, he was the 148th ranked player. He was 159th the year before. And in both seasons, he played 27 minutes a game. But what he did is he increased his scoring a little bit last year. He got his rebounding up. He's already been an elite steals guy, 1.5 steals per game. And what he can be probably at his peak is 15 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, 1.5 threes per game. Now, he shot 35% from the field, which is obviously putrid, but he did take his free throws up to 78. He also hit 25% of his threes. So those things need to come together. And it's not going to come together for a while, I don't think, just because of the guys there, Avery Bradley, Isaiah Thomas, who were there in front of him. He is probably going to project more as a Victor Oladipo type shooting guard, I would say, who handles the ball somewhat. Maybe 5 assists is a little bit bullish on him, but I think that's where he projects at. Defensively, he is awesome, and that's going to get him playing time. But whether he gets enough playing time to warrant a standard league draft choice, I'm not sure that's going to be the case, but I still believe in him long term. I reckon it's just going to take maybe another 2 seasons for his shot to come around, because everything else is there for me in terms of what Marcus Smart can do fantasy wise. You might see behind me, if you're watching the video, that I do have a Julius Randle jersey up behind me. I am not a Julius Randle fan, but he was the 7th pick in this draft, and he missed his entire rookie season save for about 5 minutes, and he was not good last season. He just wasn't. Yes, he averaged 10 rebounds a game. I'm aware of that. He was also bad in every other area. He played 28 minutes a night, had 11 points, 10 rebounds, 1.8 assists, 0.7 steals, 0.4 blocks, 43, 72, and then 28% from 3. The talk from the Lakers is that Larry Nance is going to cut into his playing time, and I completely understand that. Larry Nance took his starting job last season, and we can give Byron Scott as much shit as possible, and I did give Byron Scott shit for moving Randall out of the starting, not as much as I did for taking D'Angelo Russell out, because he was replacing him with another rookie. But with what Nance can do, I'm not sure what Randall does. And Laker fans, and I've tweeted about this, and I get the standard response, yeah, haters, of course you're a hater. I'm not. I just don't think that he's as good as what people think he is. I don't think that Julius Randle becomes a must-have fantasy guy. I don't think he's ever going to become a top 50 player. I don't think that he's going to be a top 75 guy. Yeah, he's going to get a lot of rebounds. That might drop when now that Roy Hibbert's not there, who does inflate other people's rebound numbers to a degree. Randall is still a good rebounder, I'll give him that, but he's also a real black hole offensively. He's a terrible defender, and he's a terrible shooter. The theory of Randall is great. He's a 4 who can grab the rebound and dribble it down in transition and pass. We've just never seen any of that. He's no threat to shoot. If I own Julius Randle in a dynasty league, I would be exploring trades, because I feel like the perception of him is greater than the reality of him. And at some point this season, I think we're going to see that come to fruition when Luol Deng plays the 4 and Ingram plays the 4 and Nance plays some of his minutes. And he played 28 minutes a game last year. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he plays 27. Maybe he plays 28. I don't think he's playing 32 or 30. I don't think that's going to happen for Randall. I'm just not convinced of what he can become in the NBA. And as a fantasy guy, he never projected as being anything good, and it's sort of come to fruition. Speaking of not coming to fruition or not being anything good, Nick Stauskas was the 8th pick. I had a little bit of hope for him this season. Summer League was dreadful. The Sixers brought in Gerald Henderson. There is nothing to really get too excited about with Nick Stauskas. Yeah, he hit 1.5 threes per game last season, but still shot just 33%. And as a guy coming in with a reputation as a shooter, it's just not good enough. There's real talk of him not getting his rookie option picked up for his 4th season, which is horrific for an 8th pick. He's still got an opportunity in Philadelphia to play decentish minutes behind Gerald Henderson, because Henderson can't shoot, and they need shooters. So maybe Stauskas can be that guy, but he's definitely not someone you'd be taking a flyer on in this year's draft. He's someone you take maybe a gamble on in a dynasty for absolutely nothing, for cheap deals or taking an asset back in return. I was interested to see what he could do in his 3rd season, and maybe he does turn it around, because, again, he's only got Gerald Henderson to beat out. So if he sees that it clicks, then there's an opportunity for him to be a guy who could be a 3 assist guy and 2 threes guy and 15 points and 4 or 5 rebounds sort of player. He could be that guy. but we've just seen no evidence of that so far. So it's not looking great for Source Castillo at this point. Speaking of not looking good, Noah Vonleh, like Stauskas, is a third-year player in Summer League. He really should have been able to dominate. Unfortunately, he didn't. He just looked like he fit in. And that's not what you want to see from a player who's been in the league for 2 years. And look, he is still pretty young. He came into the league really young out of Indiana. He's only 20 years old, but he started last season for a number of games in what was one of the dumbest moves of the season. I understand it. I understand the thought process. It's not about who starts, it's about who finishes, but that's also not true. Because that's great, but you put all your shit players in to start the game, you're down 20 points in the first quarter, doesn't matter who's finishing, you're not coming back. It's about playing your best players. And Vonleh didn't need to play really at all. He didn't need to play 15 minutes a night. He didn't need to play with the other good players out there where they could sag off him and not pay him any attention or attack him defensively and focus their other attentions on Lillard and McCollum. I don't believe in Noah Vonleh at all with Ed Davis, Myers Leonard, Al-Farouq Aminu playing the four, Mason Plumlee, Festus Ezeli. He's not going to get really any playing time, and that's exactly how it should be. Lord Alfred Payton was the 10th pick and quite a source of consternation last season, and obviously a source of consternation in the Orlando front office, leading to Scott Skiles' resignation, which I think we can all agree is a good thing for the NBA and a good thing for Orlando Magic basketball. Payton's now got to step up, and for as bad as he was last season, he still was ranked 123rd in the league. He still averaged 6.5 assists, 1.2 steals. They're numbers to build on. We talk about him being a bad shooter. Yeah, but 44% is not bad as a point guard. It's okay. Now, 59% from the line is dreadful, but 2.6 attempts is really manageable. But you think in this situation now with Victor Oladipo gone, it's going to be on him. He'll play more than 29 minutes a game this year. He should be at 31 or 32, I would guess. 7.5 assists. Playing under Frank Vogel's system, can he get his steals back? He was 1.7 in his rookie season. Can he get it back to 1.7? Yeah. Can he average 13 points? Maybe. He hit half a three a game last year at 33%. Real improvement from what he did in his rookie season. Strong rebounder. Can be a 4.5 rebound guy. I think there's a real chance of a big bounce back season from Lord Alfred this year. Again, he's got a very defined skill set, and it's something you really need to be able to absorb in your fantasy team. And that's something I'm going to talk about a lot in this preseason. And I'm probably going to have an article written about about my dislike of rankings, maybe. And I know I'm referencing rankings in this podcast, but you'll see it when I bring it out. It's about fitting where he needs to fit, and he offers some really significant skill sets and getting those sort of assist numbers. And you couple it with decent rebounds and good steals and average field goal percentage. He's going to be a bit of a sleeper this year, and I would be stunned if he didn't finish inside the top 100 next year. Dougie McDermott, he is literally one of the worst players in NBA history at doing things like getting steals or assists or blocks or anything that's not scoring. If you want threes, Dougie's a guy. And if you're counting 3-point percentage, he's that guy. He can get you 1.4 threes a game, which he did last season in just 23 minutes. He can convert them at 43%. He'll also get you, and this is what he did last season, he combined for 1 assist, steal, and block per game. 1. 0.7 assists, 0.2 steals, 0.1 blocks. He's an 86% free throw shooter. Comes on 1 attempt a game. So in essence, you go, who gives a shit? It doesn't mean anything. 45% from the field, that's okay, but it's still not great. Jimmy Butler's playing the 3 now. McDermott's going to be his backup. McDermott might play some 4, but then he's got to take on Nikola Mirotic, Taj Gibson, and Bobby Portis. I don't think that that Doug is going to be a player that really helps fantasy owners all that much. He's going to be a stream option for 3-pointers, and look, he could easily have a season where he hits 1.7 threes a game. He's just going to do nothing else. Dario Saric. We've seen nothing of Saric. He's coming over this year. If he gets 30 minutes a game, he should be a top 100 fantasy player. He probably won't get 30 minutes. I'd say 27 to 28. He most likely starts at the 3. He can handle the ball. He can shoot a little bit. He can do quite a number of things. Would you want him in a redraft league? You'd be fine taking him in the last 2 rounds, I would say, and seeing how that pans out. Do you want him in a dynasty league? I think that there's great potential for Dario Saric. I think that he's a really, really good player, and he wouldn't have been picked at pick 12 had he been coming over straight away. He would have been picked a lot higher than that, maybe 7, maybe 6-ish, that sort of range. Could have easily seen that being the case. But at 12, it was because he wasn't coming over for 2 seasons, and that was known at the time of the draft. So Saric is going to be a guy that can contribute. He can score, he can hit threes, he can rebound, he can get assists. He's not bad. Defensively, he's not terrible. The percentages will be pretty good. I think he looks to be a very nice fantasy asset. We need to work out how the Sixers are going to run their rotation. He's a 6'10" power forward. He might be played out of position at the 3. They might put Simmons a little bit at the 3 as well. And he's got a battle Bob Cub there as well. So there's a little bit of playing time issues, and that might keep him out of standard league relevance. But as I've said in person to people, and I think I've said it on the show this year as well, is that we're going to see so many teams with, instead of clear-cut starters, just multiple players playing 27 minutes a night, 25 minutes a night, and meaning that outside the top 50 in fantasy drafts, there's just going to be so much interchangeability. Oh, who's the guy at the moment? Who do I need at the moment? What stats do I need? Who's injured? And just rotating. Like normally you'd rotate the last 3 guys or say on your roster. You might be rotating the last 5 or 6 guys on your fantasy roster this year because you talk about Marcus Smart and the Boston backcourt. Bradley, Thomas, Rozier's got himself into playing time. Smart, Brown, Crowder. Talk about Saric and the Sixers front court. There's heaps of options there. The Bulls front court, there's a lot of options there for what McDermott's going to do, and on the wings. There's all these situations where there's players that are just going to be forced. Randall, Nance, Ingram, Deng in Los Angeles. These guys are all going to be squeezed into smaller amounts of minutes. And it's going to be real interesting towards those last couple of rounds of the draft. Pick 13, Zach LaVine. Horrible decision to try and make him into a point guard, but in the end, it made him a better shooting guard, and finally he settled into that shooting guard role, and he's better than I really anticipated he could ever be. He was red hot down the stretch shooting. He shot over the last 2 months of the season 44% from 3, hit 2.5 per game, averaged 16.5 points, got 3 assists, 1.2 steals, and that ranked him inside the top 7. He shot extraordinarily well, 48%. His defense is a concern. Yeah, the steal numbers are nice, but his defense is a concern, so let's see how Thibodeau runs that. Chris Dunn, there's lots of talk about Chris Dunn in Minnesota, but if there's one player that hates rookies, it's Tom Thibodeau. Not one player, one coach that hates rookies, it's Tom Thibodeau. He just doesn't play rookie. Jimmy Butler didn't see the court as a rookie. Doug McDermott played 8 minutes a night. Nick Mirotic played, but very, very rarely, and only because of injuries at times. Thibodeau just won't play rookies. So, yeah, unless Dunn is that special, which I don't think he is. I think he's good. I don't think he's that special. He's not going to be taking over minutes from Rubio, and he's not going to be taking minutes off Zach LaVine. He'll back them both up, but I don't think it really is going to cost LaVine minutes. Now, the last 2 months of the season, LaVine played 35 minutes a night. He probably won't play that. He might go down to 32, and I think that's reasonable. But he is going to be a top 100 player, absolutely no doubt in my mind, who has got the upside to be a top 50 guy, because if he gets 3.5 assists a game, 17 points, 2.5 threes, 1.5 steals, half a block, good percentages, which he can do, then there's the potential for that. I think he's in for a really big breakout season. He's got to keep that 3-point shooting up, but he did it for the last 3 months of the season. He shot 43% over those last 3 months. And that's 42 games. That's half a season he did it for. And the course of the season, he was 39%. So it wasn't like he was terrible, but really red hot, lots of production, lots of assists, good steals, good scoring, good efficiency. I can't say enough good things about Zach LaVine, and that's not something that I really ever thought I would say about him coming in. I was not impressed. Defense is a worry, and that might be the concern with Thibodeau, that Thibodeau goes, cool, you're shooting threes, but you're just giving up points, like you're just leaking them on the other end, and you're out of position, and your decision-making is poor. And that's still the criticism of Levine, and that might be the case. So don't be shocked if Thibodeau looks at it that way and goes, okay, well, maybe, Zachy, maybe we'll just sit you down and we'll play a little bit of Dunn, a little bit more of Dunn, or we'll play Wiggins at the 2 and get Bielitsa into the 3, or whatever they're deciding to do. That could be possibilities. But Levine looks really impressive at the moment. That's a great thing for Timberwolves fans. Have got lots of things to be thankful for, but that's one of them, definitely. The 14th pick is TJ Warren for the Phoenix Suns. Broken foot last season. He was ready to really sort of take off at the start of the year. There was talk of him being PJ Tucker's replacement. Never really eventuated. And again, I say this a lot, but when a player shows that he's got a weakness and then really works on it and changes that weakness, it's a big thing. Now, Warren is an accomplished scorer, a very high efficiency scorer who didn't do anything else. He couldn't hit threes. He couldn't get defensive numbers. He didn't do anything. Well, he changed that narrative last season. He started getting steals. He went to 0.8 steals a game. He went from 0.3 threes per game per 36 to 0.9, tripled his three-point output. He scored more, and he still shot 50% from the field. He was a 40% three-point shooter, and that was his weakness. He took his threes at 1.5 a game, so not an entirely small sample, but hit 40% of them. And he is one of their best finishers in terms of field goal percentage. Now, Tucker is not a great option. I think they really should be looking at getting Warren started at the 3. Yes, they've got Bender and Chris to fit in, but Bender's not a 3. They should be getting Warren started in there. Now, his game is limited fantasy-wise. He won't get you any assists, but if he can give you 15 points, he can give you 0.8 threes, he can give you good efficiency from the field, and he can give you over a steal a game with 4 rebounds. That's okay for the back end of the draft, but I'm not sure that his ceiling is really all that high to become, say, a top 75 player. He can do a lot of things scoring-wise, and if he adds that three-point shot, it really helps him get playing time, but he's just, the assist numbers are poor, the block numbers won't be there, and there's just, the rebound numbers aren't great. There are just things that he needs to be able to do a little bit better. I don't want to be too harsh because pick 15 is Adrian Payne, but he shouldn't play in the NBA. That's it. Pick 16, Yusuf Nurkic. Big Nurkic fan. Huge Nurkic fan his rookie season. His season was derailed due to injuries. And then it was also derailed because Nikola Jokic is an absolute freak. What does that mean for Nurkic moving forward? It means that either he's going to have to put himself into a backup role, or a team is going to trade for him and get a steal. Or they're going to see Nurkic and Jokic and play them together and have a deadly front court. Nurkic is a player who was really terrible last season. He only played 17 minutes a night, but still went 8 and 5.5, almost a steal, 1.5 blocks. Now he took his field goal percentage down to 42%, which is horrific. 62% from the line, also really bad. But this is a guy on a per minute basis. Look at his per 36 numbers from last season: 17 and 11.5, 3 blocks, 1.6 steals. Yeah, they're crazy good numbers. He is going to be, if he is into it now, he won't be a 30-minute guy. There's no way, but he should be a player. And the last 2 months of last season, he averaged 21 minutes a game. He went 10 and 6 with 1.1 steals and 2 blocks. 47 and 60%. That is Yusuf Nurkic. And I think that we see him go from 21 minutes maybe to 24 minutes next season. Maybe he squeezes an extra couple out as playing alongside Jokic. I'm not sure that he's going to be a guy that I'm going to be all over in standard leagues because, again, I think the minutes crunch is going to be real. Again, there's Fareed, there's Darrell Arthur, there's Juan Hernan Gomez, there's Nikola Jokic in that 4-5 combination. Wilson Chandler's got to get minutes. The Nuggets are going to be an absolute mess in terms of trying to work out their rotation as well. Danilo Gallinari can play the 4 also. So that's going to be the concern with Nurkic. But if something happens to Jokic and they go, okay, we've got to start this guy at center, let's play him 30 minutes a night, it's over. It's all over. There's going to be big fantasy numbers coming from Yusuf Nurkic. I like him as a long-term dynasty investment. He might be a late-round pick in standard leagues, but the amount of guys there in that front court, it's going to limit him at the time being. Adrian Payne, I was a bit tough on. Pick 17 was James Young. I'll be equally tough. He's not an NBA player. There's no reason to get invested in James Young. I don't believe in anything that he can provide. So let's move on to pick 18, and that's Tyler Ennis, who was drafted by the Phoenix Suns. He is now residing in Milwaukee, who, let's be honest, have got other players that they're going to play in his in place. Michael Carter-Williams is there. Matthew Dellavedova is there. Malcolm Brogdon will take some of his minutes. Now, there were times last season where Jason Kidd showed some faith in Ennis. The last 2 weeks of the season, he played 31 minutes a night. He averaged 7.7 points. He hit less than half a three. That's pretty poor. Now, he was also playing as a statue, so Giannis could do whatever he wanted to do. But he still got 4.7 assists and 1.6 steals. He shot 49 and 78. They're really good numbers. Over the season, 45% he shot from the field. Really good for a point guard. Could he be a backup point guard in the league in 2 years? Maybe. He's probably more at a third-string point guard, but he did show a little bit in terms of creation and efficiency and some defense, but I don't think that it's going to really come to fruition in Milwaukee. 19, Gaz Harris. Big Gary. He's the best player that your mates have never heard of. He's the best player. Actually, no, it's not true. Nikola Jokic is the best player that your mates have never heard of. Gary Harris is in that group. He is going to be a really, really, really good shooting guard. He went from a nothing in the first season under Brian Shaw, which is fair enough because who would have wanted to play for that dick? Let's be honest. Not even who would have wanted to play. He didn't even get an opportunity to play. He just didn't play because, again, Shaw, no idea. Mike Malone came in and go, Gaz, you're our starting shooting guard. You're going to start every game and you're going to be a key part. And Gaz went, you know what? Cool. I'm focusing myself on being the best defensive shooting guard in the game, and he's not there yet, but he can be. He played 32 minutes a night. The numbers won't astound you. 12, 3, 2, 1.5 threes, 1.3 steals, 47 and 82, but they should astound you to a degree. Because anyone who's going to approach 1.5 threes, 1.5 steals while scoring at 47 and 82% is someone that you should pay attention to. He was ranked 100th last season. He'll be a player that you should be picking in those 8th or 9th rounds who's got a real opportunity now to step forward. Now, that they drafted Jamal Murray, they drafted Malik Beasley. That's not an indication of what they believe with Gary Harris. They love Gary Harris. And honestly, Jamal Murray should never have been available at pick 7. That is when we can't let Jamal Murray go past pick 7. We have to get him because he's that good. Harris is the starting shooting guard. Harris will play 32, maybe 34 minutes a game. Harris will increase his scoring. He'll increase his responsibilities. He'll increase his defense. And I think that probably a top 80 season is a possibility for Gaz for this season. And moving forward, he is someone that I do really like. You would have heard me talk Gaz quite a bit on this podcast. He's an efficient shooter. He's a great free throw shooter. He's a really, really good defender. And sometimes really good defenders, it takes them 3 or 4 seasons to turn their really good defense into really good defensive statistical numbers. We saw it with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, to a degree with Michael Kidd-Gilchrist as well. Players that are really good perimeter defenders that just don't get steal numbers. Gary Harris got 1.3. It's fine. It's not terrible, but he could be a 2-steal-a-game guy. And he could also be a 2 threes a game guy. And he could be a 16-point scorer who gets 5 rebounds and 2.5 assists and good efficiency. Out of this draft class, he's a top 50. He's a top 50 upside player. Bruno is pick 20. Some of these guys I'm just going to flick through now. Bruno, I don't really know if we're ever going to see it from him. It's definitely not going to be this season. Mitch McGarry, when it's an opportunity, it looks good for McGarry. And there is maybe an opportunity this season with Ibaka and Durant gone, but he's now got to suffer through that 5-game suspension. When he gets on the court, the numbers will come, but I'm not really putting a huge amount of faith into it. Jordan Adams, he'll probably never play again, which is a real disappointment given that knee injury that he's got. I would have loved to have seen him play for Memphis over the last 2 seasons. He probably won't play again. Pick 23 is the one that I really want to get to, and that is Rod Hood. I think that Rod Hood has got the potential to be special. I think that I know that Rod Hood had a breakout last season. And I think we're going to see him take another step forward this year. Now, a lot of people will point to Hood and say he's old. Oh, he's too old. He came into the league at age 21. He's 23 years old now. I say that's fine. He's still got room to grow in the next 3 to 4 years. And over the course of time, you might, and again, people might look at dynasty leagues and go, Oh, he's too old. I'd rather get someone else. But if you're playing I'm going to get 5 years of elite production versus 7 years of elite production, you don't know. You've got no idea what's going to happen in the next 7 years. Anything could happen. I think that Rod Hood has a real chance to crack the top 50 this year. He's probably not. He probably won't be projected there, but he's a real chance to do it. Again, the problem with him is that Utah is so stacked and so deep that maybe the opportunity is not there. He was at 14.5 points last year, 2 threes, 3.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, a steal on 42 and 86. He's got to get that field goal percentage up, which I believe will happen this year. I think he can get to a 38% three-point shooter. I think he can give you 2.2 to 2.5 threes. He can give you 3.5 assists, and he can give you 1.3 to 1.5 steals, as he did. He gave you 1.1 steals over the last 2 months of the season. He is the starting shooting guard on this team. Alec Burks is not. Joe Johnson is not. It is Rod Hood. Now, Burks will take some of his minutes, but I think that Burks is being marginalized in Utah somewhat. Hood is the future. The Jazz players really, really like him. And if Hayward decides to leave, it is all over. Hood is going to put up huge numbers. Remember Hood, he's a great dynasty investment, and he's a player that really should be picked inside the top 100 this season. I think he's going to be a player that takes a tremendous leap forward. Him and Gary Harris, two of the better shooting guards in the NBA, and both come out of this draft class. Shabazz Napier, he's in Portland now, if you didn't know. They needed a backup point guard there, so maybe he gets some minutes, but I don't think there's anything to really like about Shabazz Napier. Pick 25, Clint Capella. He will be the starting center for Houston. I can't see any reason why he wouldn't be, unless they bring Donatas Motiejunas back, but even then, I don't see it. Capella is a player that is going to be fantasy relevant. There's no doubt. But you're going to have to deal with his free throws. He shot 38% last year. Yeah, it's on 2.7 attempts, but that's in 19 minutes. You think there's a chance he goes to 4.5 attempts, and that means he's a punt free throw guy. But what he is also, and if you look at his per 36s, 13 and 12 with 1.5 steals and 2.5 blocks and 58% shooting. Thanks. I'll take those numbers if I'm punting free throws. The other center options in Houston, Chinana Onwaku, no. Nene, no. Motiejunas, not signed. Nobody else. It is Capella. He should get close to 30 minutes a night. He should be able to get you 10 rebounds a night. He should get you in excess of 2 blocks a night. He should be able to approach 1.2 steals a game. Will he score in double digits? Maybe not. He might get you 10 points. He might get you 9 points. But he could also shoot 60% in a D'Antoni offense. There's a lot to like about Capella, but remember, rotisserie, pass, not punting free throws, forget about it, because you might looking, 2.7 attempts. That's 19 minutes. He's going to get more. It's going to go up, and he might replace Howard as the guy they hack, and it might become 5 attempts a game. It might become 6 attempts a game, and it is literally unrecoverable from. Punt, and you will love Clint Capella. Don't punt, and you'll hate him, and you'll think I'm a dick for saying he's good. PJ Hairston. Nope. Bogdan Bogdanovic. Rights have been traded to the Sacramento Kings from the Phoenix Suns in that draft pick swap they did this year. Bogdanovic is going to be okay when he comes across. And when he does come across to Sacramento, the competition is non-existent. Aaron Aflalo? Yep. Ben McLemore? Nope. Rudy Gay's not going to be around on the wing. Bogdan's going to come across when he comes across, and he won't come straight into a 30-minute role. But he is a player that in Dynasty, if you've got stash ability, grab him, because he's going to come across at some point, and he's going to be solid, and he's going to put in a couple of top 100 seasons. Just wish he'd come over this year. CJ Wilcox from the Clippers to the Magic. He showed some flashes last season, Wilcox, and that's something that we really have never been able to say about any players that the Clippers have drafted over the last couple of seasons. Showed some flashes. Now he heads to Orlando. He's got a broken hand. That'll be fine. He's going to be playing behind Evan Fournier. He's going to be playing behind Mario Hezonja. So that's a little bit of a concern, but he did shoot 41% from 3 over the last 15 games of the season, 39% over the season. Yeah, they're decent numbers. He just does nothing else, though. That's the problem with Wilcox. So I'm not putting a huge amount of faith into him. Let's go through the rest of these guys. Josh Eustace, no. Kyle Anderson, really, really interested in Kyle Anderson, because as Matt Smith tweeted out the other day, the Spurs have lost so many players from their front court, Boban, Tim Duncan, Boris Diaw, and they've replaced them really with Pau Gasol. There's there's minutes opening up. Now, Anderson could play the 4. Kawhi could play some of the 4 and move Anderson to the 3. We saw Popovich really get some confidence with Anderson last year and played him a decent amount of minutes, 16 minutes a game. But the real story is the last 2 months of the season where he played him 21 minutes a game. He only averaged 5.5 points, but 4.5 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.3 steals, 47 and 77. If you're in a 16-team league, that works out for you. And I reckon he goes up in minutes again and becomes a player who can give you 3 to 3.5 assists, 7 rebounds, 1.5 steals efficiency in both areas. Wouldn't be surprised to see Kyle Anderson finish inside the top 130 this season. Probably wouldn't draft him that way, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him there. He's got a very fantasy-friendly game. He's destroyed Summer League for the last 2 years. The opportunity for him to be a real star in San Antonio is probably not there, but he's got an opportunity to be a contributor this season, and deeper leagues do need to pay attention, and he's going to be a guy that's going to have stretches of time where he becomes really relevant. I like his game. That's the entire first round. Let's go into the second round. There's a lot of players we don't need to touch on. Damian Inglis, no team. KJ McDaniels is in Houston. He won't see a huge amount of playing time. I fear that he is done. Joe Harris is now with the Nets. I don't think there's much like there. Clanthony Early, no team. Jarnell Stokes, if he was into a decent role, can produce, but he's never shown that. Johnny O'Brien, no team. DeAndre Daniels, never played in the league. Spencer Dinwiddie, no team. Yes, he's on the Bulls, non-guaranteed deal. He won't make the roster. Jeremy Grant in Philadelphia, he's going to get squeezed. He's going to get squeezed by Dario Saric, by Ben Simmons, by Robert Covington. He's a 3 or a 4, most likely a 4, but the minutes aren't going to be there for Jeremy Grant. So if you own him, sell him now. After the first 2 weeks of the season when he's not playing, buy him then, because he's going to have some sort of he's going to have an opportunity at some point, but I don't really believe in Jeremy Grant. And yes, some of his numbers came from playing on not dilapidated, that's the wrong term, from a decimated Philadelphia team. But with other players coming in, he's going to be forced down, and he couldn't excel in that situation anyway. 27 minutes a game, he shot 42, 66, and 24. He can't shoot. He's a really good highlight player, but it's just not going to work out for him long-term like that. Glenn Robinson III, he's on Indiana's roster. It's going to take a bit for him to do anything. Pick 41 is the one that I really wanted to get to, and that is Nikola Jokic. He is the best player that people have never heard of. He's the best player that I'm sure everyone on this listen to this podcast has heard of, but many of your mates haven't. He was the second best rookie last season. He is a better prospect to me than Kristaps Porzingis. He can do everything. He was, in the last 3 months of the season, a top 50 player playing 24 minutes a night. He averaged 8 rebounds a game in that time, 11 points, half a 3, 3 assists, 1.2 steals, 0.7 blocks, 49 and 83, shooting 32% from 3. He probably won't play 30 minutes a night. I'd love to see it happen, but I reckon 28 minutes a night is what he can do. He dominated in the international play across the summer. This guy is a freak. If you don't believe it, I don't know what to tell you. He is extraordinarily good. He is going to be a player who will have multiple top 30 fantasy finishes. He is that good. He contributes in every area. He is not quite Karl Anthony Towns, and not many people are, but he is one of the, and there'll be an argument in 5 years to say that he'll be a top 3 center in the league. I reckon that's a possibility with how good this guy can be in the modern sense of the game. Some of the passing that he can do, the shooting that he can do, the rebounding, the defense, he can do literally everything. Nikola Jokic is a guy that has to be drafted in every league, and if he's not, and if you get him outside the top 70, it is an absolute laugh. This is the guy that should be looked at inside the top 30 or top 40 of dynasty leagues. Yeah, realistically, if we knew he was playing 30 minutes a night, he's a top 40 redraft guy. There is so much to like about Nikola Jokic. I can't get on Nikola Jokic's bandwagon anymore. The players after that, Nick Johnson, he showed a little bit in Houston, but no. Walter Tavares, Eddie talked about him yesterday on the pod with Olgun Ulic. He blocks shots. He really doesn't do anything else at this point, but I think he's going to grow into a slightly bigger role this season, and he'll be a great stream block option. Markel Brown hasn't been re-signed yet by the Nets. The next 2 players are interesting guys, Dwight Powell and Jordy Clarkson. Dwight Powell, one of the only players on this team with an above average win in this draft class with an above average win shares per 48. A lot of people will go, look, well, why did the Mavericks give Powell so much money? And I can sort of understand that, but Dirk goes after his next 2 seasons, Powell should inherit that role. And if you're in a dynasty league, that's where you're targeting Dwight, is in the next 3 seasons time. He didn't do much last season, but his per 36 is giving 14.5, 10, 1.3, and a block at 49 and 74. And I reckon he can start hitting threes at some point. It is a long-term investment in Dwight Powell, but I think it will work out. Jordy Clarkson, I think he's in for a really big season this year, but I reckon over time that Clarkson's production is going to wane. This might be his best season coming up. He's got a real chance to push for top 50 status this season. He's going to defer a lot to D'Angelo Russell, though, so that is going to hurt some of his numbers, and he may not ever approach the second half numbers that he put up during his rookie season. He was a definite disappointment last season, but a predictable disappointment last season. Still was 15.5, 4, 2.5 with 1.5 threes and 1.1 steals, and worked on his three-point shot tremendously, which is, again, all you can ask these players is to work on their deficiencies. Clarkson's going to be a player who I think fits in as a sixth man role ideally, but he's going to be starting for the Lakers for a while. He'll play a fair amount of minutes, and he's going to be a threat for the top 50, probably top 75, because the assist numbers won't be as good without Russell, when he's playing with Russell. But still a real bargain of a pick for the Lakers this late in the draft. Next ones, there's not much here to talk about. Russ Smith, Lamar Patterson. Patterson's signed on with the Kings. Maybe he's got an opportunity on that weak shooting guard spot, but not really. Cameron Bairstow is playing in Australia now. Alec Brown, we haven't seen him play. Thanasis Antetokounmpo, Vasily Micic, Alessandro Gentile, Nemanja Danjubic, Semaj Christian, Devin Marble, Louis Labiere, Xavier Thames, Corey Jefferson, and the other one is Jordan McRae, who, again, played really well in Summer League, but I just don't think he has much of an NBA future. We had a couple of questions come in. Let's see if we get to those. Jared at Twitter, JaredJ831. Is this the worst draft class of all time? No. The 2013 one might be. This is clearly not. They've just had a lot of injury problems. And his number 2 question was, is Jabari better than Wiggins? I think he can be. I think that he can be better than Wiggins. Beeben says, is it the most disappointing draft class of the past decade? Yes. Now, that's a fair enough question because of the hype, but injuries killed it. Embiid, Parker, Exum, Randall. That's 4 of the top 7 guys who had serious injuries. Smart's had injuries his first 2 seasons. Yeah, Stauskas, Vonleh, terrible. But now we're going to see Embiid. We're going to see Parker a year and a half removed from an ACL. We're going to see Exum back from his ACL. We're going to see Saric. We're going to see Nurkic not have an ACL problem. A knee problem that he battled all last season. We're going to see Levine step into a big role. We're going to see TJ Warren over his injury problems. I think we're going to see a lot happen with this draft class this season. Jordan Schultz, on the other hand, says this is kind of an underrated class with Clarkson, Jokic, Hood, Capella, Kyle Anderson, all outside the lottery. Still, he said we still haven't seen Bogdan, Saric, or Embiid. These are all great points. Jokic, Hood, Capella, Clarkson, these are great picks, great late picks. You know how much I love Hood. You know how much I love Jokic. It's superb picks. So, that's sort of what it is. It has been a pretty solid class, and I do think there's a lot to come out of it. David Laliberte says, do you think Capella could be the top performer from this draft next season in a punt free throw build? There's definitely a possibility there, but no, Jokic is the top player in this class. Wiggins is probably next, and then I reckon Parker. But Capella could be that guy that hovers around 4th or 5th. Nurkic range, Smart range, Gordon range, Hood range, that sort of area. Definitely in a punt free throw build, he's in that range, but he's not. Jokic is the best player in this draft class. All right. We're done. Don't forget, check out Fantrax. Check out the other Locked On podcasts as well on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm pleased to be a part of that network now. David Locke does the Utah Jazz one. He is the founder of this podcast. Check out his stuff. He had a great one on his Locked On NBA podcast with Rob Mahoney from Sports Illustrated the other day. So check out that. Check out all the other ones, whatever your favorite team is. If we don't have your team, we'll be getting your team soon. I know we've got the Timberwolves one in the pipeline, Warriors one in the pipeline that haven't been released yet. The Pistons one is a new one that's on board with Dan Feldman of NBC Sports. sports. Heaps of great stuff. Sean Hyken does the Bulls one. We've got Hive Talk Live doing the Hornets one. Heaps of great stuff happening on the Locked On Podcast Network. Check out Basketball Monster as well, of course, and Fantrax, the best place to host your fantasy league. We're done here, guys. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.